Hi, everyone. This is Ellen from the Astrology Journal. We have a full moon coming up on June 3rd or 4th, depending on where you are in the world. For those of us on the East Coast of the United States, it will be on June 3rd at 11:42 p.m. The moon will be in Sagittarius at 13 degrees, and the sun will be opposite that at 13 degrees of Gemini. Before I talk about the full moon chart, I just want to talk about a little bit of my experience over the last couple of weeks after the new moon. So I had said in the new moon chart, or for the new moon, that what the energies, or how do I want to say this? The story I told about the new moon chart was going through the birth canal. And that is what I experienced. Looking back, I would say that's what I experienced. So the idea was that we go through the birth canal, and going through that prepares our body for the new realm that we're entering into. So if you're a fetus in the womb, and you go into the birth canal, the contractions that happen squeeze the fluid out of the lungs, and that prepares the lungs for the new airy environment that the baby is entering into. And so I was thinking a similar thing along those lines with this process. And I, in fact, did go through what I would call, in hindsight, a birth process. I went through a dark tunnel. I experienced it as a dark period, that lasted a few days. And then I came out the other side in what I would call, metaphorically speaking, a different realm. Before this period, I was in a very much years-long hermit mode, kind of by necessity because of illness. And I wasn't able to branch out and make connections very well with people because I didn't have the energy to keep them up. And I had to focus so much of my energy just on my inner process. I really couldn't maintain relationships with people beyond some very key ones, but just a few. So anyway, I came out of this period, and I'm branching out. I'm actually interested in, I'm looking in various groups and that sort of thing. My focus is still on healing. I'm looking for connections with people, groups where I can continue on my healing journey, but just in a different context. So anyway, but that's a huge, enormous shift. Also, about a month before this new moon, I had something come up, and it led to the realization that I needed a supplement, that more of a supplement I had been taking. And I upped that amount, and my energy levels have improved as a result. And so I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic, that this may be the thing that I've needed that's been missing. We'll see. It's too soon to know for sure, but it's certainly part of why I'm feeling more expansive in this way. So anyway, but the reason I'm telling you that story is, my question is that I was kind of walking with today was, did I experience what I experienced going through the birth canal because I told the story of going through the birth canal, and so therefore I lived it? Or was that really one of the energy potential? I mean, obviously it was one of the energy potentials, but was that kind of what the energy was, and I just read it correctly, and so I was able to better understand in hindsight what I went through. When I was in it, I didn't understand. I was not in a place to be thinking that way. But anyway, so I think that's an important question. It's one that I walk with, and I pose it to anyone listening also because, what matters isn't what anybody else says, whether they have a chart in front of them or some other divinatory tool or whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is what we're experiencing right now, and what we know, and the skills that we have to draw on, and the choices that we make through that process. That's the only thing that matters. So for whatever reason, I right now am going and starting a practice of doing new and full moon readings. It was an experiment, the new moon reading that I did, but then coming through the other side, it's really clear that this is the practice I want to establish, and this is new for me. I've made it. I've shied away from looking into the future, even just a few days. I've more been wanting to use astrology to help me understand now. So if I'm going through something and I'm not understanding it, looking at a chart that helps me understand what's going on, or also looking retrospectively. Something happened in the past, pull up a chart. Okay, I can understand that better. And I've shied away from looking into the future because I don't like being in a position of people relying on me, telling them what the energies are, and that being what people look to make sense of what's going on. I would rather people look within and make sense of what's going on there. But for whatever reason, my practice is going in this direction, and I'm going to take it. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a fun adventure, but I don't know. I guess all I want to say there is, just don't listen to me, listen to yourself. But if anything I say is helpful and resonates, in a way that clarifies something for you, that's wonderful. So anyway, that's my story, and that's the question that I have and that I'm putting out there for everyone else also. Okay, so for the full moon actually is interestingly similar to the new moon chart, although I'm sort of not sensing that I'm going to go through, personally, I'm not sensing that I'm going to go through another birth process, but we'll see, or at least not one like what I went through before. But there's a Grand Cross again, like there was the last time, and there's that funky keen decile triangle that was in the last chart also. So there's a couple of differences, though. One is that in the Grand Cross, last time Mars was involved. This time it's Venus. So Mars has stepped out of the way, Venus has stepped in and taken its place. Everything else is the same. Jupiter and the nodes are involved, and then Pluto is involved also, and Jupiter is involved. The keen decile, also very similar. It's the south node and one leg going off to Chiron, the other going off to Mercury. But Mercury is conjunct Uranus, and Uranus was involved in the last one. Mercury wasn't there. So Mercury is the new player in that aspect pattern. There's another interesting thing going on. The moon is in a sesquiquadrate relationship with Venus. Sesquiquadrate is a 135-degree aspect. On the natural wheel, 135 degrees falls at 15 degrees of Leo, and that is the start of the gibbous phase. And the gibbous phase has to do with practice and skill development. That's kind of my shorthand for it. And then the moon also, on the other side, makes a novile series aspect to the north node. Novile series aspects are about promise, the promise of the fruit that will. So we have a fruit tree, and down the road it will fruit and it will bear fruit. Right now, that's not the case. It's doing other things right now. So the promise is that it will bear fruit. And you have to do, the tree has to be cared for. It has to go through various, cycles. If we think about humans, we have certain developmental stages we have to go through, and then we mature and develop whatever we develop. So it's an interesting pattern. There's the skill between the Venus and the moon, and there's then the promise between the moon and the north node. So we will grow, you could say, emotionally, in terms of our emotional well-being, in terms of our security, in terms of all that. We just have to make sure we do the work. And then there's a square that there's. So the moon and Venus and the north node are forming another triangle in the chart. Again, not an official pattern, but it's there. And that square has to do with taking action, a challenge, but it's about. I think of it as the young adult heading out on their own, starting to establish their own lives, laying down the tracks for their own lives, their own independent lives away from their families. So they're starting to establish their own work, their own community, their own home, their own relationship, and all that sort of thing. So that tends to be how I think of that. And because the North Node's involved, it suggests that that's a growth trajectory for us. So that's kind of the basic snippet. And what I mostly want to do in terms of this, or not a snippet, I'm sorry, that's the basic lay of the land of what's going on in the chart. So what I want to do in this reading is read you a couple of things that I wrote this morning. One was a brief journal entry where I was tuning into something new that was surfacing, and it feels like it's kind of anticipatory in terms of the energy of this chart. And then the other thing is something I tuned in this morning, and I just asked kind of intuitively, what is the message to pass on for this chart? And so I'll read what I came up with, or what came out when I did that. Okay, so the journal entry. What is awakening in me today is the awareness of how the religious conditioning I experienced when I was young affected my relationship with God, how it taught me that God is punishing and I am bad. And God, you could say source, or higher self, or whatever makes sense for you. For me, the word God made sense. Sagittarius is God. Sagittarius is religion, and it's God. God in the sense of I would say in the sense of our human conceptions of it. And I was born, the moon is the baby, the birth, the womb, the birth, the mother, the child. I was born into an environment where the religious teaching was essentially kind of nobody said to me, "Hey, you're bad," but the underlying understanding was you're bad and you have to be punished to be a good human being. It was a very strange belief system, but that's what it was. And I had worked through the I'm bad part. That took me some years to do, but I worked through that pretty well. But I hadn't gotten the God piece. I'd still had a kind of a contentious relationship with God. And when I had that insight this morning, it was kind of like something was just surfacing inside me. I realized that this whole kind of war I've been on with God has been a reaction to religious teaching religious conditioning that I grew up in. So the moon also, by the way, in evolutionary astrology is ego. And so in evolutionary astrology, the ego is seen as essential. It's without our ego, we couldn't have this experience in these bodies in this life. And so the issue isn't ego; it's what happens to ego when it's conditioned in wrong ways with falsities. So Sagittarius is truth and lies. So when the stories we're told and that kind of imprint in us, and that are kind of maybe imprinted in the genes that we carry forward too. If those are out of alignment with what, again, as evolutionary astrology calls natural law, which is Sagittarius, then our ego gets distorted. And then we have to go through these, we have to compensate. That's also Sagittarius. We have to compensate. And one of the ways we compensate, societally speaking, is we have these class and caste systems. Caste systems, again, religion, that's part of Sagittarius. And to the extent that a person thinks they're better than someone else because they're of a certain class or caste, that would be, in my mind, a compensation. For some reason, a true sense of worth hasn't been able to anchor within. And so we take these positions we use our position in society as a way to say, yes, I'm worthy, or no, I'm not worthy if you're in the wrong position. But in either case, the issue is worth hasn't been anchored within. So anyway, that's and I've been seeing this whole issue with class and caste coming up a lot in these charts. So it'll be interesting to see if anything happens around that during this part of the cycle. So the other piece that I'm going to share with you is that intuition piece that I wrote. And so here it is. Be humble. Hubris is a compensation for wounding. Humility is our natural state. It is a safe state of grounded worth, one where we see that we are all equal. So I don't know if I mentioned the gibbous phase and Virgo has to do with humility also. So it's skill and practice, but it's also about humility. It comes Virgo, which is very much gibbous energy, comes right after Leo. And so Leo, we're kind of full of ourselves. We're just full of our life force. And then we go into Virgo, and we have to learn to temper that vitality, not diminish it, but bring it into service to something beyond ourselves, because it's not sustainable if all we're doing is expressing and expressing and expressing. My thinking about that is that's not sustainable. We have to figure out a way to integrate that vitality and then also bring it into service by developing skill and taking our talents and developing them into skills that we can then bring into relationship and into the world. So be humble, and humility isn't about lack of worth. It's about grounded worth, as I said in the quote. So anyway, next part, build skill. That's Taurus. Taurus is building. Venus rules Taurus, and there's continues to be a lot going on in Taurus. Build skill. Build skill in human relationships. Relationship is a skill and a practice. Build skill through practice. And then the last part is feel your insecurity. So Venus is at 28 degrees Cancer, and Cancer can be read as emotional security or insecurity, depending on where we are with it. And Venus is, as ruler of Taurus, is about our worth, our sense of self-worth. And if that's lacking, we may find it difficult to develop a sense of security in ourselves and in relationship. Okay, yeah, and I'll leave it there. So feel your insecurity. It is okay to feel insecure. It is through feeling it that you can move through it. Feel it and love it. Feel it and thank it. It is telling you something important. It is telling you about a wound. Feel into the wound and love yourself. So that's what came through. And I hope there's something helpful and worthwhile for you in this. As always, I just want to remind I'm not I'm just somebody going through my own healing journey. I don't have training in counseling or therapy or anything like that. I just share my journey and my insight and understanding that comes from that. So anyway, like I said, I hope there's something worthwhile and helpful and useful for you here. If not, that's fine too. Again, the most important thing is listen to you, not to me. Okay, take good care. Bye.